Hello, my name is Victoria Eon. As Marie-Hélène said, I work at the Clinical Research Unit in Montreal, and I'm a clinical research coordinator, meaning I am the person who organizes someone's participation in a clinical trial. So today this presentation is meant to explain why clinical trials happen, how they happen, and who can participate. So what is clinical research? It's medical research that involves people like you. It involves human participants and helps us to be able to bring research done in labs with animals and in petri dishes into new treatments and therapies that patients can benefit from. It also allows us to gain insight into how a disease progresses and how does that compare to normal healthy behavior. So with each clinical trial, it is volunteer-based. So a person would volunteer to participate in a trial. And the objective is to discover better ways to treat, diagnose, and understand human disease. As I mentioned, it's volunteer-based, so at any point in time, if the side effects are too debilitating or life just gets too busy, it is conditional participation, meaning that you can withdraw, though we really encourage people who are going to participate in clinical trials be really serious about participating. Clinical trials are sponsored or funded by various organizations. They could be written and created by physicians themselves, funded by foundations, medical institutions, or even pharmaceutical companies. So there are several phases of clinical trials or different flavors. So phase 1 happens after all of the basic science research, so after the animal studies and studies in the lab. So phase 1 is the first time it's introduced into people, and that is where we want to see if the drug itself is safe and can be tolerated. This is also the first time that we see side effects. So a lot is unknown, and safety is the #1 priority. Phase 1s also include less than 100 people, and who gets dosed when is very controlled, again, for safety reasons. The second kind is a phase 2, so it's the next step. And in that we want to see, does the drug do what it's supposed to do? So we start testing whether the drug itself works, and we look at different doses to see which one has the best effect and the less side effects. This is also with a little bit more people, so typically 100 to 300 people, and it's an opportunity for us to start monitoring what happens with different dose effects. Phase 3 is a larger trial. This occurs usually before approval of a medication, and this we see how does this new drug compare to other drugs or to standard of care, meaning normal medical care. So we really continue to see what side effects occur. Are these side effects manageable? We're really looking for the least amount of side effects as possible. And like I said, this is a larger trial, so it can be as many as 1,000 people or more. Phase 4 is typically after a drug is approved, so that it's on the market, it's available for physicians to prescribe. And in this, we see what are the long-term effects. Does it maintain its benefit over time? And what are there side effects that maybe crop up later down the road? And with all of this, I've put in a note here that while I say it's, while I estimate how many people are in each trial, it tends to be less in rare disease trials just because the population is that much smaller. And that is based on the Orphan Drug Act of 1983. So trials themselves are based on randomization, which is a process in which participants are put in a treatment group by chance. So they can be in a placebo group, which is an active product, but it looks like the experimental medication, but it has no actual value, what we call a sugar pill. So somebody could be randomized to receive a placebo or the active drug itself. In the case of double-blind, we try to avoid bias as much as we can, so the investigators or the clinic team doesn't know what the assignment was and the patient doesn't know. That way we can see if there's a true effect with the medication. Again, without any bias and in interpreting any side effects that pop up, or if a patient's getting better, we don't want to attribute that to any false sources. In addition, clinical trials often compare a new therapy to existing therapies to determine if this one is more successful or does just about the same as the other. So in cases where the new medication is just as good as an old one, is it really necessary to bring this into the market? That's the kind of idea. And as I said, some studies use a placebo, which isn't not ideal, but it allows us to see if there's a real effect in the medication. So who participates in trials? There are strict eligibility criteria that needs to be met so that we can identify which patients are the safest to enter and which patients would give us the best idea or the least complicated view of drug effectiveness. So, for example, there's inclusion-exclusion criteria with every trial. Factors that allow someone to participate in the trial are inclusion criteria, and then factors that obviously allow block somebody from entering the trial are exclusion criteria. And these criteria are based on factors such as age, gender, stage of disease, current medications, previous treatment history, and other medical conditions. Typically in a trial, there are restrictions on which medications you can be on in addition to. So all of this plays into the idea of we want to see if there's a real drug effect or if there isn't a drug effect over a placebo. So why participate? There are potential benefits in participating in a clinical trial. You can gain access to new research treatments before they're available. You also contribute to medical research and help that drug be pushed along the pipeline, as we call it, so through all the phases, to market approval. Also, it allows you to receive regular and careful medical attention from a research team, including doctors and other healthcare professionals. And you, through this process, play an active role in your own healthcare. So it's hundreds of thousands of people that allow drugs to get onto the market, and these people at one point participated in clinical trials. Potential risks in participating. There may be some unpleasant, serious, or even life-threatening side effects. Again, we've never, especially in phase 1, we've never seen this drug in humans, and we don't know how it's going to affect them. We have some idea based off of the animal trials, but again, a mouse is very different from a person. The study also may require more time and attention than standard treatment, so more visits, more visit time, higher frequency of blood tests or treatments, any hospital stays with certain procedures, and some complex dose requirements. So it can be more effort than normal medical care, but you have to weigh the risks and the benefits. Questions I always encourage patients to ask when considering a clinical trial. The study itself, what is the purpose of the study? Why are we doing this? Why do we think this works? Why do researchers think that the approach may be effective? Again, that goes into why do we think this is going to work? Who will fund the study is also a great question. Overall, even though different people can fund the study, so pharmaceutical companies, individual doctors, all of these things have to be, all of these studies have to be approved by the same regulatory body, so they all go through the rigors of adhering to Health Canada standards. So even though it might be a pharmaceutical company versus a doctor who funds the study, we're all held to the same standard. But it's good to know where is this coming from. How long will the study last is also really important. Depending on the study, they could last from weeks to months. It all depends on the design and what the outcome they're looking for is. Also, what are my responsibilities if I participate? How much time will I need to commit to being in this study? Things like that. Also, participation in care related questions. What kinds of therapies, procedures, or tests will I have during the trial? All of this is usually explained through a consenting process, which I'll get to. Will I be able to take my regular medications while in the trial? Who will be in charge of my medical care? All of these things are important things to ask the clinic team before getting into a clinical trial, and we encourage everybody to come with questions like these and even their own questions. We want everybody to be on the same page and understand. So, what to expect when you decide to join a clinical trial? During a screening visit, which is a way to see if you'd be eligible to join the trial, so we go through those inclusion-exclusion criteria. We see if you don't have any other conditions that would complicate any benefit we might see. So we have a screening visit, and there you'd meet the doctor, the healthcare team, and we'll be able to answer any questions you have. You'll be provided an informed consent form to read, understand, and sign, which will give you the key facts about the trial itself, what the medication is, what it's supposed to do, and what is involved if you decide to participate. If all of that goes well, we sign the informed consent. We all understand what we're doing and where we are. We'll start the clinical trial after the study doctor confirms that you can participate. So after we get the blood results and the test results from that screening visit, we can move forward to participation. And with that, you may undergo further examination, testing, or scans, depending on the trial. Once we complete the trial, there are some follow-up visits that can be required for safety purposes, especially if a medication stops at the end of the trial, and we want to see if there's any residual effects there. So in a clinical research unit, much like the one I work in, there are many members of the clinic team. So there's the study coordinators like myself who interact with you, the patient, and the patient themselves see neurologists for physical and neurological exams, different raters. They may see nurses for blood draws and vital signs, and even in some trials there are some imaging assessments, so MRIs, that type of thing. So again, with this giant team of people, who do you think your primary point of contact would be? And actually, that person will be your study coordinator. That is your first person that you go to that talks to the neurologist if you have an issue, and manages your entire participation in that trial. So our unit in Montreal is much like other units. We've been active since 1986. We specialize in a bunch of different neurological diseases, so multiple sclerosis, neuromuscular, there's a brain tumor group, migraine, etc. My group specifically is neuromuscular disease, so we look at a variety of disorders, myasthenia gravis, which is autoimmune, muscular dystrophies, there's a whole spectrum. We do a lot of trials in ALS and rare diseases like Pompe. So within our unit, we provide a range of trials, which would give patients the access to some of the most advanced medical technologies out there today. Our study results, like other units, are accepted by Health Canada and the FDA, as well as the European counterpart. And personally, we also contribute to the Canadian Neuromuscular Disease Registry, which is where somebody can sign up, give some basic information, and it's a way for patients in Canada to get information about trials and different things going on in the neuromuscular world. Our unit is dedicated to aiding the advancement of neuroscience through clinical research. We participate in clinical trials to identify new or more effective treatments for our patient population and also patients all over the world. We supply study subjects with the best quality of care. That's something we really hold ourselves to. And we pride ourselves on providing high quality data to sponsors, or in other words, the companies that fund the studies themselves, and the investigators or the physicians that run those trials. And much like our unit, other units have the same basic goals for bringing new treatments to their patients. So, how can you get involved? There are 3 great ways. 1, contact your physician and ask about current and upcoming trials. Depending on how connected your physician is to research, they might be able to give you some really great insights on what they've seen coming. If you're in Montreal, you could visit our website and speak with a coordinator. If you're outside of Montreal, I suggest you find out what your local clinical research unit is and go through the same process of contacting them and talking to a coordinator and seeing what opportunities are there. And lastly, clinicaltrials.gov is a list or a database of all of the clinical trials going on through, I think, just in the US and Canada, but it includes studies all over the world. So there you can actually search by disease and find out where these trials are taking place, what are they, what are the inclusion-exclusion. So it's a really easy way without having to try to track down your clinical research unit to see what is going on out there and what you could participate in. And I'll take any online questions. Thank you. So question is, can a patient stop a clinical trial, or can the research team make a patient stop a clinical trial for any reason? With a clinical trial, you do agree or commit to doing your best and participating in the best way. However, life happens, and medical conditions might get in the way. So if you need to withdraw from the study, that is always an option. Also, for safety reasons, if the clinic team finds that this medication is jeopardizing your health, they can ask you to withdraw. And again, that's for safety reasons. We don't want to negatively impact your overall health. We want these therapies to maybe bring some benefit and not cause any harm. Yeah, so what happens at the end of a clinical trial? Will I still be able to get the drug, or will I stop the drug? Unfortunately, with different phases, the answer is different. With phase 1, there's a very small group of people that are being tested, and at that phase we still don't know what the proper dose is, so we can't prescribe. And we also don't know the full safety profile. So after phase 1, typically someone would not be able to get drug. Similar things happen in phase 2, where again that looks at the safety and it's also trying to find the best dose. So there we're again looking at what creates the best benefit for the least amount of side effects. And with that, we typically have to wait till phase 3 or after approval of the drug to be able to get drug. In phase 3, sometimes there's what we call an open label extension. So if patients participate in a trial, afterwards there's a way for them to keep receiving drug, but that really depends on how much data has been put together showing that there's a benefit. Usually after participation in a trial, generally you have to wait until approval of the drug to then receive it. That being said, participation in a trial helps push that process along. So if we didn't have volunteers, we wouldn't have these drugs getting approved. So there's a balance. So what if I don't live in a big center or a city? Can I still participate in trials? So here in Montreal, we actually have a lot of patients that come from outside of Montreal. There always is an opportunity for someone to travel to a big center, and a lot of these trials also have compensation for travel and maybe stay overnight, depending on what the budget is. So there are opportunities to participate if you don't live in a big medical center. That being said, it's not possible to do some of the procedures outside at your home clinic, just because we want to make sure that it's done the same way for every patient. Part of producing good data and being able to push that process of drug approval along is having consistency across all patients. So the question is, if you decide to participate in a trial, is it required that you tell your doctor, your neurologist, and all of your healthcare providers? So there typically is a question on the informed consent form asking if you would like to notify your doctor. Honestly, your participation in a trial is up to you. There is a question, or there is a worry that participating in research, especially that involves genetics, that will have some sort of impact on insurance premiums and that type of thing. So your participation is your own business. That being said, if you allow us to discuss or notify your primary clinician, we will do so. Also, when you participate in a trial, you will be given typically a card that if for whatever reason you end up in the hospital, and we need to know that you're in a trial because there could be some interaction there with that medication, you could give that to emergency services and that notifies them. Similarly, if there's a situation where we need to know what you've been assigned to, are you on active drug or placebo, because that affects your outcome. There is a process to emergency unblind, as we say, and to know what you've been assigned to. But that also ends in everybody knowing what the treatment is. So the trial unfortunately has to end, or not the trial in a whole, but your participation ends with that disclosure. But again, it's for safety reasons, and that's our primary focus at the end of the day. Thank you.